98.7 WMAY, Springfield's news and talk.
All right, back at it. And overnight, while you were sleeping, the Illinois House passed a ban on certain semi-automatic weapons and magazines of 12 or more rounds, plus extending the firearm restraining order from 6 months to a year. That bill did not include limiting anyone under 21 from getting a firearm owner ID card. They stripped that out of what we've been discussing for weeks out of House Bill 5855. But what they did is a gut and replace of a Senate bill that already passed. So the Senate bill passed back in April of 2021, dealt with amusement rides. And then yesterday afternoon, they provided a House amendment to that Senate bill, and they brought it up in committee. Now, earlier on in the day, Governor J.B. Pritzker, again, he talked about, how he said that it's popular. A gun ban is popular, he said. So here's Governor J.B. Pritzker, followed by Decatur Republican State Representative Dan Calkins reacting just to a little bit of this assertion of the popularity of a ban on certain types of weapons. Governor J.B. Pritzker, again, was at the Ball Chatham School District here in Springfield, just south of Springfield, discussing this and taking questions about a proposed assault weapons ban.
And so I think there's a strong majority of people across the state that believe that we don't need weapons of war on the streets of Illinois, and that we can save lives if we pass an assault weapons ban.
I guess you could take a poll. I could, make a poll and find the majority of people don't like Santa Claus. I mean, you could get polls to say anything you want. This governor's got an agenda. He wants to run for president. He needs to have another plank in his platform.
We're talking about.
So this was all early in the day at the Illinois State House, and this was before we knew that there was going to be an amendment to a Senate bill and just how rapidly it would move forward. So now we get to the committee last evening at about 4 o'clock is when it was scheduled, and this is the amendment that included a change from a ban of magazines of 10 or more to a ban of magazines of 12 or more, and they did reduce the penalties for possession of those magazines from, I think, like a Class 2 felony to first offense being a petty offense with a $1,000 fine, and then subsequent offenses for having magazines over 12 rounds being a Class 4 felony. But the measure still laid out a whole bunch of weapons that it defines as assault weapons, and it's around 100 different types of pistols, rifles, and shotguns, and it says that you have to register those within 300 days of the bill's enactment. So they put this in committee, and House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch was in front of the committee proposing this bill and saying that it's necessary to curb gun violence. It's necessary to make sure that people feel safe when they go out in public and they can go to parades without the fear of being shot at by somebody who has ill intention in their heart, a maniac, a crazy person who's looking to do as much damage as they can. So he says that this proposal to ban these certain types of weapons is necessary. Here is House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch in front of that House committee discussing this bill.
If this bill were to become law, there will be no removal of these weapons from people who already own them. And I really want to highlight that, because we always hear this narrative that we're taking away guns from lawful gun owners. We are not taking away anyone's guns, but we will require that the serial numbers on these grandfathered weapons be associated with the owner's FOID account. There must be accountability.
So Speaker Welch saying that he's not looking to take anybody's guns away, just wants to make sure that they're registered. And a lot of people pushing back against that, saying, listen, registration leads to confiscation. Seems to be a ongoing mantra in the Second Amendment community. So Ed Sullivan, he was there with the Illinois State Rifle Association, and the gun rights groups have not been negotiating on this. They say that they are not negotiating on a gun ban. They've promised to file litigation against any type of gun ban. like what they saw several weeks ago with House Bill 5855, like with what they saw last night with the House amendment to Senate Bill 2226, I believe it was. But here's Ed Sullivan talking about some of their opposition to this idea of banning certain types of weapons and magazines and the criminal penalties associated with it.
Part of me wants you to pass this bill. From what I read, it's less constitutional than it was before. Takes away more rights than it did before. Makes it easier to strike down because this isn't the right process that should have taken place. Millions of gun owners become criminals the day this bill is signed. I can take my firearms, I can take my mags across the border. I have the means. It's easy. Plus, I live 30 minutes from the border of Wisconsin. What if someone can't? Are you going to go out and tell everybody that their handgun that has 15 rounds, common 15-round magazines, becomes a felon because they have 3 of them? 70 counties throughout the Illinois are 2A sanctuary counties. So in 70 counties, they're not going to enforce this law if it becomes law and it's declared constitutional. 70. So you're going to have the haves and the have-nots. It's not going to be someone that looks like me.
So Ed Sullivan with the State Rifle Association is one of the groups expected to file lawsuits if this does indeed get enacted. And we also had in front of the committee a member of the African American Gun Association, the Illinois director of the African American Gun Association. And Courtney Redmond took to the committee and talked about what he didn't see at some of the hearings of previous iterations of this bill. He talked about how the minority community is going to be impacted by this in a negative fashion. Here's Courtney Redmond.
The committee meeting, the third hearing in Chicago. You know what I seen in the audience? You know, I seen with Moms Demand Action. I didn't see one black woman from the South or the West Side. You know why? They were working. We want to make it more expensive. We want to make it more trying, and we want to restrict the black community from their rights. It is their right. It's their Second Amendment right. We had to fight for that right? Because we were considered 3/5 of a man. I would no longer be considered 3/5 of a man. Don't take my rights.
So Courtney Redmond making his short statement to the committee, and you had a lot of back and forth as well that ultimately led to a vote. But before the vote, you had State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer sound off on this, and we'll get to that. Plus, Republican State Representative Andrew Chesney on the House floor speaking directly to the House Speaker, but also Governor J.B. Pritzker, who was on the House floor late last night, early this morning, as they voted to approve this measure to ban certain types of semi-automatic guns and magazines of over 12 rounds. So stay tuned. Overnight, while you were sleeping, they passed this out of the House. Now, both chambers are back in session today. What's going to happen in the Illinois Senate? Is it going to come up? They have until January 10th to pass legislation before the new General Assembly is seated, and they have to start over from scratch with all of the thousands of different bills that they have. So stay tuned. Much more coming up here with Springfield's Morning News on 92.7 WMAY, including your phone calls at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here, live and local. You can also email bishoponair@gmail.com.
App 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.
All right, back at it and hearing some of the debate from last night in committee. Again, this is on a new bill. It's not House Bill 5855. It's on a House amendment to Senate Bill 2226 that was filed at about 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. They had a hearing at 4 o'clock. It didn't start until about 4:30. And then they went at about 12:48 in the morning this morning while you were sleeping to pass this bill in the Illinois House. Could come up in the Illinois Senate today when they return. But let's get back to some of the debate in the House committee. Here's C.D. Davidsmeyer, a Jacksonville Republican state representative, sounding off on his problems with this, though he says he likes the idea of creating a task force to go after gun trafficking.
Right? Trafficking, that's a problem. That is killing people throughout the city of Chicago, throughout the state. It's not just inner city Chicago. It's not, right? And nobody wants to get rid of illegal guns and bad activity more than a legal gun owner. But you are turning legal gun owners with this bill into felons. It's a slippery slope. I understand we don't know what the answer is to mental instability, right? To frustrated children that have mental issues or whatever it may be. But we're doing something here that is going to harm more legal citizens than anything. So your registration in here, and it is a registration, is that going to be available via FOIA?
Great question.
No. Okay. I just want to clarify that. Once again, I don't think the majority of gun owners are going to register. And I'm not sure who's going to round them all up, very honestly.
So C.D. Davids-Meyer is actually going to join us live in the last half of next hour. Stay tuned for that. But on the House floor, they went ahead and brought it up and proceeded to move forward with it, where you had proponents saying this needs to happen to curb gun violence and saying that it's constitutional, and they trust that it's going to, regardless of any challenges that are expected, if it passes and is enacted, it's constitutional. So they said that it's to curb gun violence, and we need to pass this to make the streets safer. But Governor J.B. Pritzker was on the House floor last night while this was being debated, and Republican State Representative Andrew Chesney, he pushed back against Republican leadership, saying that they didn't stand stronger against this. Here's Andrew Chesney's impassioned debate last night.
Because if we see the nonsense that we just saw, the Republican Party will not exist in the state of Illinois. But we're right on the issues. So I think, Speaker Welch, you're probably smiling because you're saying, gosh, our leader just joined your bill. You're thinking checkmate. And I agree. And it's very unfortunate for our party because we stand for Second Amendment rights. Because we are right on the issues. Every state in the Midwest is safer than the one that you control, Governor, and the one that you lead, Speaker Welch. Every state. And in the state of Illinois, we continue to empower criminals and punish the law-abiding citizens. Every time. We empower the criminals and we punish the law-abiding citizens. But you might ask, what states are starting to embrace pro-gun legislation? Do you know the state that actually was the founder of constitutional carry? It was actually Vermont, big Republican stronghold. Also joined by New Hampshire, Colorado. And over half of the states in our union disagree with the Democrat majority. Over half of the states disagree with you. And I do agree, Speaker and Governor, I do agree that our area, our state, has crime problems. But I can't help to note the area that the crime problems predominantly resonate are in the areas you represent.
So that's Republican State Representative Andrew Chesney speaking directly to Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is on the House floor. And again, that was about 12:48 this morning. So while you were sleeping, they did ultimately pass that. And the outcome of the bill was around, 64 yes and 43 no. It passed, and we'll talk more about this next.
From the Fly SPI studios, take the easy way out. WMAY.